Hello, ChaosTrainer fans. Today I want to talk to you guys about a new feature that I threw in there like just yesterday. And so when these guys are going and they're trying to solve stuff, I think I kind of ranted about this at the end of the last video. For crying out loud. I added in some new neurons. So these are the basic neurons like can see, coin entity, I2, and it's at a score of 1, can see coin entity, I1, score of 1, can see coin entity, I0, score of 0. And so I gotta look into something there. But or it's -1, sorry, -1. That's what the score is, -1. And this one's just 0 because it hasn't been evaluated yet. So it's just set at 0 because there's no neuron touching it. But what you see here is these ones that say can see blank. Well, those actually are checking to see if the tile is a tile they've stood on. So the bots, this little guy's got a ton of life here. I'm just kind of waiting for this guy to die. Go. Okay. I got to figure out why that button doesn't work while they're alive. But if I clear this, he can remember touching these tiles, and if I hit follow, the position lines up with it pretty well. So that makes sense. So they now have the ability to remember the tiles that they've touched, and it can dictate their behavior accordingly. I'm going to jack up the simulation while we go. I think, let's go 80 bots. I don't want to slow this thing down too much because then I can't show you guys. So part 2 of this talk, beyond just that little announcement that the latest 0.0.4, is that what I'm on? 0.0.5, yeah, that guy won, is capable of remembering stuff. I'm also going to just walk you guys through some of these settings. So we have the fitness manager setting. So force new fitness sorting block each generation. Basically, let's just say that generation 3 has a high score and then generation 4 doesn't beat that score. We can still take the highest score from generation 4, which forces them to evolve. So we see more sophisticated behaviors, not always good ones, faster though. So it's like a trade-off there. Max spawn count per generation basically says how many bots total are allowed to spawn and each generation. So we've got 20 species, we'll say, and so each one of them is going to roughly get 10 bots in there. Max top fitness count storage per generation. So that's actually per species. So each species you could store the top 1, the top 5, the top however many. I wouldn't watch that math because if each of them are spawning a couple, let's say if you put that at 10 and each of them is about to spawn 10, you're not going to see any improvements there. You only want to evolve the top X, few of them. Species max generations since last improvement. So actually I'm going to start with this one. Species max turns to optimize before subject to extinction. So each species, I should turn that down a little bit, but each species is allowed to behave or generate, try and optimize for a while. Try and become survive and not just die before they're subject to this next clause here. So each round, once that 50 is up, the top, we've got 20 species and we keep the top 19. So that means we kill one of them. So I could go and we could kill the bottom 10. But if one species has a bad, a good species has a bad turn, then that could put them in the bottom there. So again, you guys can play with these numbers however you like. And then 75 right here, this species max generation since last improvement, is the amount of generations after they've optimized that they have like they've got to get a new high score before they actually get killed off. So say you had like in generation 20 you had a real high score, but you haven't managed to beat that in 75 generations, it's going to kill you off, saying that you've hit about as optimal as you're going to get. Um, Randomized spawn position, that's pretty self-explanatory. Randomizes the angle and everything else. Sometimes I turn that off for what I call fidelity when I'm trying to get them to do the same behavior and over again. This is what drives me nuts when you get one that scores real high one turn, and then I can't get it to do anything the next couple turns, so I got to figure out what's up with that. And spawn species weight by score. This is a big one. That means, like, when you see, for example, like a bunch of the same color ones show up, basically, if one scores 100 and everybody else scores 1, there you're gonna, with that button checked, you're gonna see a lot more of that species pop up. I think I've gone through the rules enough. I guess you guys can look at them, but there's 2 event types right now: collect and tile enter. There's score effect. You can add to their score, take away from their score. You can add the life expectancy, take away from their life expectancy, and you can add to their spawn count, which is more of a fidelity check, and I don't use it that much. And then additionally, you can select your entity if it's collect, or if it's tile enter, you select a tile. For tile enter, you also have unique tiles, so the bonus is only given once per when they first enter the tile. Force climb forces the Y, forces them to climb, they hit the tile at a higher Y if they want the bonus. So that's good for mazes where you're trying to climb upwards. It's not going to be so good for one like in the center here. These 2 aren't implemented yet. But now I can implement them, I guess, because they now have the ability to remember that stuff. Y score multiplier basically increases the. It basically runs this number to the power of the Y. So, like if the Y is 2, then it's if it's -1, it doesn't count. But if I set this number to 2, it's 2 to the power of 2. If their Y goes to 3, they get to the X from their start position, then that's the power of 3 to the power of 4. So if you set that number increases significantly, which is why I always use like 1.05 and stuff. That usually is enough. Let's go over the brain maker settings. So this is, you can select what inputs and outputs they have. If you guys do this, you have to restart the simulation. I know it's messed up. It's a weird setting screen. Just if you change anything in here, just restart the simulation. Save it and restart the simulation. And then those will come into effect. So I know I'm working on fixing that. Input basic movement is it lets them know if they're turning or if they're moving. Those are actually input neurons. Am I turning? Am I moving? The amount that I turn in the amount that I move, like forward, backwards, is fed into the neural network as inputs. Basic movement output. I don't know if I'd ever uncheck that. That's allowing them to turn and allowing them to move forward / backwards. Input output basic noise. You can leave that check for now. That's that. I think I talked about that. The little noise things they do. I uncheck that for performance sometimes, especially if it's. I mean, there's nothing collaborative in this game yet, so is it necessary? Input basic vision. Of course, you're going to want that. Input basic self is health, and I think one other thing. No, not. Let me just double check this. So that's input basic vision. Input basic movement is the 2 neurons I talked about. Input basic self-awareness is health. Yeah, that's right. Yep. So we could put that in there. I actually want to add another one that actually fires off on health change. This one just, they use the entire health score. Advanced object LSTM, long short-term memory. I think that's what that stands for. But basically, we feed in the state of the previous neuron value, and that factors in to the neuron's current value. You can turn that on. Not sure that's so effective in a nonlinear environment like this. Feel free to use it if you want. Use binary neuron output. What that does is that takes whatever the output is, which is usually once you squish it with a sigmoid somewhere between -1 and 1. and it turns it to just this pure Boolean. So they're either moving or they're stopped. So they're, so they either turn to 45 degrees or they're not turning 45 degrees, so it's not like it's a factor where it could be, 0.5 times 45 degrees or 0.3 times 45 degrees. Same thing with neuron input. We take the inputs and make them pretty Boolean. Either you see it or you don't. Otherwise, like for vision, it uses the distance it is from it as the weight. So that's pretty cool stuff. You don't need to have binary input on for this thing to run. I honestly just use it for debugging sometimes. Well, I need to expose biology, but just watch the speed. Sometimes the speed can get a little crazy if you don't have that set right. It'll just sprint off into the distance. And bot tile memory is the new one. That's just been enabled. So here we go. Here's the neat neural network options. Starting neuron dependency count is 12. You've seen a lot of videos where it's 3, so you just, those little lines on the neuron screen here. That's which, yeah, they start with 12 here. I think I cranked it up just because I was bored last night and I was screwing around. And, sorry, I'm chasing down a memory leak on another computer, so I'm keeping an eye on it. And I just found some stuff, which is good. But there's some type of memory leak I got to track down in here. So these are neuron dependencies, and these are, like I said, output neurons, input neurons. Yeah, I need to make that render above the line. All right, back to BrainMaker settings. So starting neuron dependency count, 12 is kind of high, but they have a ton of neurons. So mutations per generation, so that's how many different, and this is the mutations here, how many different mutations we're going to do. So like adding a neuron, we can change neuron weight, we can disable a neuron, which actually I don't have working yet, but that's something I should do today. It's a lovely Saturday and I'm still working on this. Yeah, so it's the amount of mutations that'll happen each generation when mutate happens. Also, there's the breed chance versus mutate chance. So most of the time we breed them. And again, you can change this. I actually, in the basic config, I just dropped this down so the mutate's more likely because I think that we're seeing some behavior stall out because they've basically become incestuous to an extent. So I need to also, there's some more neat neural evolution of augmented topologies that I've got to implement. Either way, so that's down here is the amount that they would breed with and basically cross their neurons and use their species neurons plus another species neurons versus mutate. So and then adjust neuron weight chance goes plus or minus 0.2. And the neurons' weights are all pretty much between -1 and 1. So that there's an 80% chance when they do mutate, that's what happens. And there's a 5% chance that they'll create a new neuron dependency. There's a 10% chance that it'll change the weight just completely and set a new value. Instead of plus or minus 0.2, it'll just set a new value of anything in between -1 and 1. So it's, what, 20 times? 20 times? I don't know. Saturday morning, I'm tired. All right, add new neuron chance. That adds the hidden neuron layer. And then these aren't actually being used yet, but I need to make it so the bias neuron gets adjusted and and we actually can disable neurons as well in mutation. So these two are going to be powerful, I think, for helping us learn better. So that pretty much covers, and I already covered these, that pretty much covers those options there, and I think the display setting, this is just mainly for graphics. You can turn off shadows, and you can, it's like this score events. There, let's turn out the score event and see if I can't freeze this thing. Yep, there it goes. I gotta fix that layer. And see there, you can see every time someone scores. So Not the prettiest thing, but just kind of puts a little blip on the screen. So, all right. So that's the settings. Yeah, they've got memory now. Oh, look at that guy. See, that's an effective way. So I want them to explore, so then basically give them a point for new tiles, and that's the most effective way to hit as many tiles as possible. If I hit view tile memory, it remembers all those. And what I probably ought to do is make it remember tiles it's seen, and I mean that also opens up the gateway for all sorts of stuff like can remember where tile is or something like that. So I digress. That's all I got for today. Thank you guys for listening. Alpha testers, thank you guys all for alpha testing and whatnot. Thank you guys for thank you guys for sharing my stuff on Twitter. Got some good press there, so and thank you guys for liking on YouTube. I love it when you guys share. If anybody wants to try the alpha, just hop on the Discord and we'll set you up, and you guys can download it and play with it. All right, thanks everyone. Bye.